Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of Slidin into My DMs, part of the D4 network. Thanks for joining us where we today, as always, we'll talk about rules about Dungeons and Dragons. We'll talk about Dungeons and Dragons news and basically just talk about ways to make sure that everybody at your table is having a great time. So anyway, thanks for being here, and thanks to two of my DMs. We're a little short-handed today, but we have Corey with us and Preston with us. Thanks for being with us today. No.
Which one of us is the short?
You're not short.
or is Dallin the short one, and that's why we're short-handed?
There you go. Yeah, Dallin. Yeah, unfortunately, Dallin, aka the Blackthorn, aka Mr. Rogers, couldn't make it today, and I tried to rope in the dungeon mistress, but on short notice she was otherwise engaged. So anyway,
Corey, that's twice that he got a pass and you didn't. So
yep. I mean, he's dead. He totally
sure died. Illusion's ruined. Don't worry about it.
You're dead to me. You see, you're dead.
That's good. Anyway, thank you to you two for being here. I'm excited to jump in to the things we wanted to discuss today, but maybe really quickly first, thanks to those who have been joining us on Tales of Veneria. We just released episode or session, I guess, 3 today as of this recording. So yesterday, by the time you guys can see this, there you go, right there, session 3. Yep. It's been a lot of fun, and I think session 4 next week is going to be the best.
So fun.
That session 4 is my favorite session so far.
Same here.
It was so fun.
Same here.
I really enjoyed it a whole lot. I can't wait.
It was good stuff. So yeah, go ahead.
I have a quick anecdote before we begin, just to kind of teach you that not everything that you do is pointless or worthless. So if anybody's noticed in the background, I have a staff that my brother and I made as a prop for a character that I played like twice. But we made like a full like staff for him, and it's just been sitting in the back as just kind of this prop, this kind of little cool accomplishment piece. Well, yesterday, to quote an orc from the Two Towers, I took a little tumble off of a cliff. The cliff being the 2 steps in my garage. And I sprained my ankle really bad, like full on, like near fracture, right? Shoot. Kind of bad. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, how the heck am I going to get around? And because I don't have a cane or anything like that, and it is hard to put weight on it. And I'm like, and I yell at my wife, I'm like, bring me the staff.
And so I do not to let him have his staff.
Yeah. So I've been hobbling around like a wonderful wizard all day. And it just goes to show that the props that you make might have use later down the line. So don't worry about it.
That's right.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic. Okay, well, let's jump in to the things that I wanted to discuss with you guys today. So as always, as usually, we have a quick ruling that I wanted to get to, and then kind of a larger conversation. And so for the quick ruling, this actually comes to us from Sarah Whiteley. So thank you, Sarah, for this, what I thought was an excellent question. I'm assuming it's a she, made a comment on
a girl on the internet.
I know, on my channel. even more astounding. Sorry for the few females that I do have watching and following. Thank you. But anyway, and to the males too. I'm gonna edit all of this out.
We're starting to skirt on the uncomfortable.
Yeah. Anyway, it was on the Death Knight episode last week. So anyway, Sarah asked this about kobolds. Will the blind fighting style negate sunlight sensitivity in the kobold race if you close your eyes? Or I would add, have a blindfold on or something like that, similar to, let's say Preston's character in Tales of Veneria, speaking of Victor. And, there was a little back and forth. Some people were like, I don't think rules is written that'll work, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bring this up in my DMs because for reference, here's what we read on sunlight sensitivity for kobolds. You have disadvantage on attack rolls and on wisdom perception checks that rely on sunlight when you, the target of your attack or whatever you are trying to perceive, is in direct sunlight. And then, of course, blind fighting, you have blind sight with a range of 10 feet. Within that range, you can effectively see anything that isn't behind total cover, even if you're blinded or in darkness. You can see invisible creatures, blah, blah, blah. And then just blind sight. A monster with blind sight can perceive its surroundings without relying on sight within a specific radius. Creatures without eyes typically have blah, blah, blah. If a monster is naturally blind. Blah. So again, the question. I'm a kobold. Kobolds have pack tactics, right? Which gives you advantage if you're standing, if the enemy that you're attacking is standing next to an ally, within 5 feet of an ally, right? But that would be negated if they were in direct sunlight because you're supposed to have disadvantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to fight in sunlight if you're a kobold. But yeah, if you close your eyes or blindfold yourself and had the blind fighting style, and were within 10 feet then of the enemy, right? Even if they were in direct sunlight, would you have that disadvantage, or would you now get to have advantage from pack tactics?
For the sake of my entire character, no disadvantage.
You're not playing a kobold. You don't have sunlight sensitivity, or is there something you're not telling us?
Turns out he's 2 kobolds or 3 kobolds in a trench
standing on top of each other.
That's why I had an unusual complexion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So rules as written, probably not. It probably wouldn't negate it because it specifically says that it has to. So, and this is a vaguity that you can pick up as a DM, being like, oh, it just says that it has to be in sunlight, not that it's in sunlight that you see or something. It's weird. It's dumb.
Right.
It's a very rules lawyery way to say it. It's not how I would say it at my table. I would say, yeah, if you close your eyes and use the blind fighting instead, then yes, definitely you can overcome that sunlight sensitivity. But rules as written, I can very much see how an Adventure League, DM or somebody who wants to follow these strict rules would be like, no, technically it's still in sunlight, even if you can't see it.
Okay, but so so I guess here's where I would get hung up on that, because it says, maybe it hinges on how you interpret this first sentence, because it says, right, you have disadvantage on attack rolls and on wisdom checks, on perception checks that rely on sight when you, the target of your attack, or whatever you are trying to perceive, is in direct sunlight.
Yeah. So the question is, does it say, is the attack also qualified as that's something that you can see?
Right.
Or is it an attack?
Yeah.
Or wisdom, or
exactly,
and or
exactly.
Like is it an and or? Right?
Exactly, because if we're putting those together, you have disadvantage on attack rolls and on perception checks that rely on sight.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now I'm not relying on sight. So even though they're in direct sunlight, I'm not relying on sight. So I should be fine. Or is it, you have disadvantage on attack rolls?
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
If they're in sunlight, you have disadvantage on attack rolls.
Yep. And I think
on perception checks that rely on sight.
And I think in this particular case, because it is saying specifically that you can see, I like as a DM, like I can see where Corey's saying as well, where as a, if you're in a very rules lawyer or strict environment, that just erring on the side of, like to not permit one thing or the other based on whatever rule set, why, for whatever reason it's strict, whether that be Adventure League or whatever. I think for me, like looking at it from the perspective of why is there sunlight sensitivity? Is it their eyes specifically?
Right.
Are they dampier?
Yeah.
Are
or
they
is it like an aversion
like to their skin?
Yeah.
Right.
Never mind. I was gonna make a ginger joke. Yeah, I have a little Irish in me. I'm not completely ginger, but yeah. So it's those kinds of things that as a DM, for me at my table, I'd probably look at those and say, okay, what makes sense for why this character is like if anyone's watched, what was that one with the Gelflings, the Black Crystal?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of a thing where she's trying to acclimate herself when she's coming to the surface and, wearing a blindfold. For me as a DM, I would probably also say, okay, this helps with that. But if you were ever to lose that sash or whatever eye covering, you're probably going to be at disadvantage again. But working with the players to be able to say, okay, what makes sense for this particular scenario?
But even when I'm trying to fall asleep, right, in the middle of the day, and I close my eyes, there's still sunlight streaming in, and that would still probably sting for a drow or for a kobold, who who has been spending all their time in darkness, and their pupils are gigantic, and then they come out in the sunlight.
Sure.
So I can see it both ways. I probably would say that if you close your eyes as a kobold, or more importantly, I'd probably say wear a blindfold, like something that darkens everything. And then I do have one more thing to add to this, and this is a fun little trick that you can play as any sort of character. If you have the lucky feat and you close your eyes, technically your disadvantage on attacks with a lucky point allows you to roll 3 dice and use whatever roll you want. You basically have better odds when you close your eyes with the lucky feat than you do just skillfully trying to attack something.
Yet one more reason why so many DMs disallowed the lucky feat.
And if you go into an eventually game,
I'm going to pretend. Let me get on my sort of dark, brooding demeanor. I'm gonna be Dallin for this portion.
Okay.
And as we all know, Dallin is usually the good cop here.
Man, when he's not here, we do call him by his first name a lot, don't we?
That's okay. That's okay. It's no longer a
no, it's not.
It's no longer a secret. Yes, I think I would say that the way I read it is that the disadvantage on attack rolls and the perception checks both have the rely on sight qualifier, and therefore, if you're not relying on sight for your attack, i.e., you have your eyes closed or you're wearing a blindfold, as long as you have the blind fighting style, then there is no disadvantage. And I think it's particularly fitting to make that ruling because, after all, you are taking a fighting style in order to, compensate. And that is a bit of an investment on your part. So I don't feel too badly. I sound much more formal than Dallin actually ever sounds.
Well said. Well said to Dallin. That's
Dallin just possessed you for a moment.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out how to get that out. And
also, now we have this to lot over you and show to him to be like, hey, look at somebody trying to impersonate you.
That's right.
Tori still wants to know what she sounds like. Come on, Corey.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
All right. Well, feel free to let us know in the comments, everybody, if how you might rule this at your table. I always enjoy kind of seeing other people's interpretations. So,
or if you have another quick ruling you'd like us to talk about.
Yeah, as always, questions are welcome, and we might just get them into a future episode. So, all right, let's be done with the quick ruling and move on to the larger conversation that I wanted.
Which is about you getting a Patreon, right? No, I misinterpreted the email you sent out today.
Okay, we're gonna need to take a break so that Corey can familiarize himself with the actual topic, and we'll be right back. And we're back.
Okay. I get it now. I got
Yes. I have considered starting a Patreon, but ultimately decided to go with the YouTube membership program because it was easy and I don't have a lot of time, which you should consider joining if you like the content and want to support us. But anyway, all right. Patrons is the topic du jour. And we're not talking about warlock patrons here, although I suppose the two could be one and the same.
Go hand in hand,
right? But we're specifically talking about patrons as outlined in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. There's a section towards the back that kind of goes to great lengths to give DMs like some ideas and options for how to run a patron for their party. That is, if they wanted to have some sort of overarching organization or person or being that was sort of, the patron of the party. It listed all kinds of great things like potential perks that they might get, quests, some great role play. It was mostly kind of flavorful stuff. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression almost of this patrons chapter, I've been very interested and I've had a lot of people actually ask me about it in builds and, hey, do you want to work this in?
That exorcism earlier worked. He went back to his own body.
Oh no.
He's here!
Hooray! We burned some stage.
The blackthorn from the dead spell worked.
Mr. Rogers, quick ruling here. Blind fighting plus sunlight sensitivity, go.
No, too
Oh,
late. He already answered. He already answered.
I just want to see if they
We want
match.
to see if they match. Yeah.
no, I'd say no because
Whatever.
it's not just your eyes that are affected by the sun. It's your skin. It's your
But what if the
overall being.
qualifier says that you can see?
We'll talk about it offline.
Your skin and stuff.
Hey,
look, I
I'm
really
trying.
can't be here. I just came to say hi really quick. I just wanted to tell anybody who's watching, thank you so much for watching, and we're really appreciative, especially of the support for the Tales of Veneria.
Yes.
Any of the comments in there have just been really positive and supportive, and I love it. So
yeah.
Anyways, that's all I can hang around for. I got to pop out of here, but I just
Okay.
wanted to say.
All right, I'm gonna drop concentration. Wait, no, it's
See you
not
tonight.
concentration spell.
All right, see you guys. Don't have too much fun.
All right. See ya.
Never ever talk about somebody and give them an impression. They will immediately show up, apparently.
I'm sticking to my guns that he.
Hey, if that's the case,
I was
do your best
channeling-
impression, Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, he was scrying and fully told me what he really was gonna say. He just was coming in here to just throw everybody off.
It was a spell. The spell messed with his memory. He really didn't mean that.
Exactly.
No.
I've totally lost my train of thought now.
So we were talking about patrons.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Squirrel.
But it seems like that was awesome. Like the patrons are really sort of their almost it's almost Wizards of the Coast way of saying, hey, DMs, obviously you can do this anyway, and maybe you are, but just in case you're not and you're looking for a little structure around this kind of idea, here's some structure for you. Go for it, run with it.
Yep, it gives you some structure. It gives you some good ideas on how a patron would function and how they might act as who would be their go-between, what kind of services they would offer, that sort of thing. Because oftentimes it's nebulous kind of stuff where somebody's like, oh, well, we're working for this merchant guild now. Shouldn't they be putting us up in a hotel? Right. And it's like, as a DM, it's like, stipend? Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how that works. And I don't know how much money they would pay you or that kind of thing. And that makes it a little bit less work if you're already got that kind of in your mind, so that you can be like, oh yeah, well, I know that there are merchant guild patrons, so we can kind of base things off of that one.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. Importantly, for the Bronze Battalion games that we used to do, I used to want to run that as a full adventuring guild, right? And I would pester Dallin and Preston constantly about okay, well, here's how much money is in the business, and here's what I want to do with a few things, and they would just be like, okay, yeah, we'll just kind of hand wave it, whatever. But there's a section at the end of this that is becoming your own patron and making your own guild.
I thought of Sarge.
Yeah.
Turgan, as that is, who kind of ran the Bronze Battalion, Corey, that is, as Turgan. He was constantly he was passing out flyers in game, recruiting all the time and stuff like that. I was like, oh, this is perfect for that, because it gives you some guidance on being your own patron and starting up your own, guild or mercenary group or whatever, which is fantastic. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do kind of a high level overview. We've kind of done that a little bit, but there's maybe a couple of things more to touch on. And then I want everybody to just go around the horn and give me your favorite potential patron as outlined here. We won't cover all of them. There's several. So let's just do 3, right? Our favorites. Again, still staying high level, but just talk about kind of the perks and kind of what this organization might look like and that kind of stuff. And then at the end, we'll just list sort of pros and cons of using a patron and call it a day. Cool. So Corey, why don't you lead out on the overview?
Yeah, so there's a couple big things that it talks about in the book. And again, for the book, we keep saying the book. This is Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, that you can find these specific rules in. But a high-level overview, you get specific things. You get perks from your individual patron, which are just little bonuses. You get assignments from them, which for a DM means your quests, or a good moneymaker downtime thing between them. And then you also get a specific contact that you an intermediary NPC that you talk with. So the biggest draw for players and the biggest note for players when it comes to being a patron is when you're doing character creation, technically there's a step where you weave your stories together, right? You kind of get connections if you want everything. Some DMs do it, some DMs don't. But you can choose to instead have a group patron at the beginning of character creation. And you get something called group assistance, which is this really cool ability to once per day grant another party member advantage on an attack roll
or an ability check
or an ability
a
check,
saving throw, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's really strong. I'm like, we should always have a patron. Of course, me, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Free advantage once a day for like all of my party members, or I could give them, or we could, it's like, that's awesome. That's really great.
I think the downfall there is the reason why they're giving you that advantage is you are sacrificing. Oh wow, wow! Excuse me, pulling a Colby here with the throat clean. The downfall is that you don't necessarily have very unique, eclectic backstories because you're all working for the same person. You're all working as part of a military unit, which they make for great stories. It's not my favorite though. Like I like having these again. And I was just talking to Preston just a moment ago while we were on pause. I like having the group of weirdos that come together and decide to share knowledge, and they all have these different backstories.
But now, correct me if I'm wrong, this doesn't take the place of your background for your character, correct? Right? It's just in addition to. And so, I mean,
in fact, all patrons have specific, like, if you want to be this type of thing in the patronage, there's a background for that.
And so, I mean, you could technically still say, like, yes, we're all part of the same criminal syndicate or academy or religious order or whatever.
Criminal religious order.
Exactly. We got here from a different place, but now we've been working together for the last couple of years, or even this is our first mission together, or whatever. But no, I mean, I get where you're coming from. It does sort of pigeonhole you a little bit, and we can talk about that as a potential con.
So something. This is where I'm trying to resolve for myself. Let's say I am a warlock, right? And I have I pick the, I don't know, the old one, or what do you call it? The fiend, right? As my patron for that. And in my background, I also decide I want to have a patron of an ancient being, guardian celestial.
Sure.
It's really weird.
You're basically double dipping there. They're fighting over your
or maybe they're the same
control of your soul.
How would you guys, I guess, resolve that? Because I mean,
we already did our quick ruling.
The same.
So as far as patrons go, it's usually a thing where the party talks together to decide that they want a patron. So the whole party is kind of being like, yes, we all want to be under this patron, and if that's a grand being, then what would happen is you would have special properties from that divine being or from that ancient entity or whatever, and you would just be serving that same entity as a warlock. That's how I would kind of weave it.
But there could be some cool story elements happening here where, like, maybe you do have this like other warlock specific patron, right? That you're sort of maybe like trying to hide from your celestial patron, or or they know about it and there's conflict, or something like that.
So at that point, communicate with your DM and see if how they want to play that.
You're a double agent, go and play on both sides.
There you go. Sure. Why not?
In your crime academy.
Maybe your warlock patron has tasked you with, infiltrating, right? Some other celestial being,
corrupting it from the inside, or purifying it from the inside. There's not enough good aligned warlocks out there, guys. Be a good aligned warlock, and be like a crusader, inquisitor.
And I gave a great option for one in my undead warlock episode earlier this week.
Another card, take a drink.
But
one of these days, we're just gonna get on, and you're just gonna say all five episodes really quick, so you run out of cards and don't have to worry about it
right away. Yeah, exactly. What was I going to say? But and the reverse could be true, right? You could maybe you're an unwilling maybe you are an unwilling warlock, right? Your patron has sort of what's the word that I'm looking for?
You are
Against
you're
your
my subject
will.
or die.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
exactly. Like, and maybe you're seeking,
Mhm.
aid from a different worldly
Yep.
being, and so
Like,
that's
hey,
kind of why you're going.
How do I break this contract?
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
being has my sister and won't give them
Right.
back unless I accomplish 10 horrible feats for them. Please
Right.
help me.
Okay,
You know,
okay.
kind of thing.
I'm more on board now, and I think that qualifier that you said it basically saying warlock patron versus patron, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that for me would be important is if I did end up having those two, is I would say, okay, when you're talking about one or the other, to disambiguate what's
Let's
going
use
on.
a different word.
Yeah, let's use a different word because I'm getting confused here when we're talking about
Sure.
which patron, or is it your Patreon? I don't know.
Yeah. So everything moving forward will just be about the specific Tasha's patron system
Correct.
for our Warlock patron videos. Future card coming soon on which one we think is the best.
Yeah. Okay, so well, let's talk about our favorites. Why don't we? You know what? I'll start. So there are several: Academy, Ancient Being, Aristocrat, Criminal Syndicate, Guild, Military Force, Religious Order, Sovereign. Of all of them, I think the one that appealed to me the most, and not just because I'm a religious guy, but the Religious Order. I will admit, I do enjoy the interaction of like religion and like the pantheon in D&D. I think it just adds like another spice to the stew. You know what I mean? From a role play perspective, and I think that, well, okay, so just really quickly, it gives you lots of different options for religious orders. You could be part of the undead hunters, a group of undead hunters. It doesn't just have to be like a churchy, scholarly, you know what I mean? Although devout scholars is one option, a relic collectors. So, I mean, this is basically Indiana Jones with like a religious flavor, charitable missionaries.
Colby.
What?
I was going to talk about academies, and I was going to make an Indiana Jones reference.
It's okay. There are Indiana Jones is good enough that there can never be too many references to, well, it depends on the movie, I guess.
If anybody's ever watched the 2004 Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman in it, he is technically just like a singular undead hunter that's funded by the church.
There you go.
Right? And the Secret Order.
Yeah. Militant inquisitors, so kind of almost that's a little bit darker aspect, I think, to religion, right? No one expects the militant inquisition. Doomsaying evangelists, right? There's lots of different ways you could go with this as far as like what you want your religious organization to be, and then you do get some really great perks. You get divine service. So it says in times of need, your group can appeal to the priest of your faith for magical aid. This is actually really strong, which is the main reason why I picked it.
Yeah.
An NPC cleric or druid of your faith who is of sufficiently high level casts any spell of up to 5th level on your group's behalf without charge. The caster provides any costly material components needed for the spell, as long as you demonstrate your need and are in good standing.
What level's Heroes Feast?
6th.
Yeah, 6th. But Raised Dead is
Raised Dead.
5th,
and it costs 500 gold worth of diamonds.
You're saving 500 gold on whenever you need to bring that unfortunate bard back to life.
Exactly.
Because he got mummy rot for the 3rd time.
Or or just stop by the temple on your way out of town and get like a high level aid spell, cast on everybody, and now you've got tons of temporary
heroism.
So that's really cool. Obviously you can exploit it, and your DM would probably be like, okay, I'm not letting you exploit this anymore.
Again, all of these perks come with the cost of doing things for the church.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Your patron is not just giving you stuff out of the goodness of their heart. They want something in return.
You've got to be in their good graces. You get equipment. I mean, a free holy symbol or druidic focus. Okay. Proficiencies. This is kind of nice. Each member of your party gains proficiency in the religious skill if they don't already have it. So, hey, that doesn't come up a lot of times in most games, I would say, but one more proficiency. And then it kind of gives you some options for who your contact might be, what they might look like. The Shadow Tongue, a mysterious speaker for your order, advises your next step, but fears being discovered by a powerful rival faith. Inspired Creator, a mysterious text. The gradual translation of a secret holy text points you towards the next step of a divine destiny. The fierce inquisitor, the beloved healer, divinity's voice. So all these different kind of cool, flavorful options for who, you know, your contact might be. It doesn't just have to be like a boring priest that you just, oh, it's Father Vestibule that we go and talk to, you know, on our way out of town every time, and he gives us the next step in our quest. And then religious order members, it kind of gives you different membership roles and things: counselor, defender, inquisitor, emissary, chosen one, and then some suggested backgrounds for those, like you mentioned earlier, Corey. And then some great like quest options too. You know, a band of faithful wandered into territory hostile to your order. You must find them and escort them to safety. Or a relic recovery, or a cult hunt. You're going to hold, you know, some members of an evil cult dangerous to your own, you know, religion or religious beliefs. A desperate pilgrimage, expunge heresy, prevent prophecy. A rival order stands on the cusp of fulfilling a prophecy with deadly ramifications. You strive to undermine their blasphemous agenda. I mean, this is great. And these are all great. You know, I think when I read all of these, and obviously you could use patrons in this way in a sort of pre-existing, pre-written Wizards of the Coast adventure, right? Your Rise of Tiamat, your Storm King's Thunder,
the
but it
Order
seems
of the Gauntlet, the Zentirum, the Harpers.
But it seems to be maybe most useful, I think, in like a homebrew setting, right? To sort of give you and your players like some guidance, you know, maybe some quests to kind of start you off on your adventure that maybe might lead to other things eventually, right? Stuff like that.
One thing it does do is it gives your party a good reason to be together.
Yeah.
Yes. Like there's always that little like, well, why are these people who are fighting all the time and arguing? Like, why did they meet up randomly in a bar and get together? Right. Or why did they decide to stay together? And the reason is because their patron is paying them.
And you know what, that was actually going to be when we talk about pros, that was going to be one of the things that I wanted to highlight. Is it's like I've played in campaigns before where it felt like there was a very good sort of motivation for my character, for all of our characters to be together, and you know why we came together and things. And then there have been other campaigns where it's been a little more nebulous, where it's been like, you know, I'm not sure why we're, you know, chasing this bad guy or going after this thing, or trying to like who are you to me, you know? And so having just sort of an easy step to be like, well, now I know why we're all together, and now I know why my character has this motivation to accomplish this task. So it's just a little bit of a head start in that direction, I think, which can be nice. Preston, why don't you tell us about your favorite patron?
I hope I'm not taking anybody's thunder, but I, for thematic reasons, I really like the Ancient Being. I did like I was leaning a little bit towards the criminal syndicate type stuff, because I think that's kind of fun to have this little, you know, hey, I know a guy type situations when you're trying to look for somebody, especially when you're, a lot of the campaigns that we are playing as in our group, there's that kind of pervasive, hey, we're the good guys, we're trying to find the bad guys, we're trying to kind of put them down. And I found that kind of interesting, but I think that the Ancient Being one takes the cake for me. Part of it because of, you know, being able to have that, I like that intrigue of, as a DM, to be able to say, hey, here's this creature of, you know, vast knowledge and experience, and it's, you know, resources that you can tap into, that would be able to say, hey, you know, I'm going to send you over here, I'm going to give you just barely what you need, and you know, if you complete this, then we're going to up the ante as we kind of go. And one of those things is, you know, obviously they give you some equipment in there, and some of this equipment, they have access to certain magic items that you might be able to find. So if you're in a limited magic world, that could be a nice way to open that up to players without saying, hey, I have a magic or 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 something similar. You have stuff where, you know, research, if you're trying to figure something out, you have that kind of paragon of knowledge that you can kind of turn to and say, okay, hey, I want to do that, you know, we need this information, and then they can turn and say, hey, I'll give you that information, but first you got to do this thing for me.
Yep.
You know, you have the sanctuary, so your safe houses, your typical kind of stuff going around. You have where you can go around and find, you know, like if it's a more well-known ancient being versus something, you know, very eclectic and macabre, maybe, you know, maybe it's the other one I thought was cool is the strange gifts. So in there you have a small measure of esoteric power, so like at the 5th level, and again at the 13th you gain one supernatural gift in the treasure chapter, which if you haven't seen those, I think they're pretty cool. A couple of those are stuff
like little boons, right?
They are,
treasure chapter from the Dungeon Master's Guide, right?
Yeah, this is from the DMG, yes. So it says one of them is the Blessing of Health. So that increases your con by 2, maximum of 22. So like there's not a lot of places where you can get these kind of bumps. And so that to me was pretty powerful. Blessing of Protection, +1 bonus to AC. Blessing of Magic Resistance. You have advantage on spells and magical effects. Blessing of Understanding. Your Wisdom increased by 2.
All kinds of like really powerful.
Yeah, I think
like there's a lot of these.
I would make a caveat for any DM who wants to use this being. Make sure that you're picking which one your party gets, not being like, okay, you guys hit the level, pick whatever boon you want.
The DM determines which gifts are available.
They also give you, so this one I thought was funny. There's the Blessing of Valhalla. They'll give you the Horn of Valhalla, which was a primary plot point for one of our other campaigns.
Yeah.
And
all we needed to do was get to a certain level, and we could have gotten it.
You could have just walked up and said, "Hey guys, you know, I need a Horn of Valhalla." And they're like, "Okay, what color you want? You know, bronze."
Well, I think that's really cool. I like, and if you're a fan of Tales of Veneria, you may have already noticed that like there are certain beings for some of these characters that act almost like patrons, and for me, it's just a single character person, but I do kind of tend to spread those buffs out over the party. In fact, our latest episode had the party get a sort of boon from these divine beings that help them along their path and everything. And I think it's really cool to be able to throw something in like that, and maybe not have it be a god, but have it be somebody who's just like, I've been around long enough that I just like to fiddle. You know, I just like to dabble in the affairs of mortals because it's fun. Who cares, you know?
Yeah.
Yep. And to become the what's his name from Midsummer Night's Dream, Oberon.
Yeah.
You like to mess and meddle with the humans. But yeah, that's it. There's a wound repair closure, and it was the weapon enhancement. So you can get your weapon will be a +1 weapon. So essentially they just enchant your weapon and bump it up. I
think there's more like boons, similar boons in like Theros, the Theros book. Obviously you can create your own if your specific god doesn't have one, or god or ancient being or whatever doesn't have one that really fits any of those. Obviously as a DM it's your prerogative to make something cool and then take it away if it's too overpowered.
The thing that's cool about this, that at least that I like about the ancient being, is that with this kind of mentality you can say, hey, go out and do this cool thing, this really big magnanimous act, and then I want you to come back, and for doing this I'm now also going to give you that, not just loot and other stuff that you also get that boon that kind of we talked about in one of our DMs episodes, where you're able to give them that little extra, like, hey, good job, like your god approves or your patron approves. And I find that kind of fun. So
cool. Okay, well, Corey, what's your favorite of the patrons?
So I really like the Academy, but we've already talked about what I like about it, and that's becoming Indiana Jones. So instead, I'm going to talk about the military force. I like the military force because specifically it has the mercenary company in it, which again, being the leader of the Bronze Battalion during that game for us really got me into like the spirit of wanting to make a mercenary guild and how it would function and everything. There's a few different types that they give you, a few different examples. Again, this isn't the only 6 that you can pick from, but there are 6 primary examples. Part of a standing army, part of a mercenary company, an expeditionary force, which that one's really cool. A little bit of monster hunter if you want to throw that into your world. You could be part of a horde, which is awesome. Like you know, these goblins, they just kind of picked me up.
I got here.
Starting a revolution. You want to come?
Yeah. You could be planar conscripts. You could be sky warriors, which is really cool. But what it gives you is it allows you to, and this is great for level 1 characters who want to get that plate armor really quick. You get access to non-magical weapons and armor at a 20% discount at a facility associated with your military force.
A 300 gold discount on plate armor.
Yeah, and then it says you can buy magic items at the DM's discretion, but receive no discount. So it's a pretty good deal. You are part of chain of command. So basically, if you break a rule within the nation that your military has like power in, you don't report to law enforcement for punishment. You report to your military, so you can kind of get away with a little bit more, with a little bit more of a slap on the wrist,
depending on the military organization.
Yep, some would say that is a little bit overreaching on power, but we won't get into that. Yeah. You have official access to certain areas that normally other people would not. Secure facilities, prisons, military installations that might have like a vault inside of them that you need to get into. So it allows you a little bit more freedom to move about a kingdom. And then you get a salary that basically you get your modest lifestyle and then like 1 silver piece on top of that. And then as you rank up within that military, you might get more. What I really like about it is the idea of making a campaign based around a military troop, right? A military organization. And I got a little taste of that with the Bronze Battalion that we did, but being able to do like, okay, everybody gets to pick the same race because we're all part of the same nation kind of thing, or one of a few different races. Yeah, we could be a whole hobgoblin party. That would be awesome. Or like dwarves. Like I've always wanted to see a full party of dwarves because I love dwarves. Yeah. It's just one of those things where it's like being able to have that and then have these very clear cut like orders, like, okay, your military commander very clearly says there's a camp of goblins over there, go wipe them out. Like, and it's not really your place to question it. Like maybe you can start sowing those seeds of doubt as part of the campaign.
Then you start having those war crimes where it's like, man, blood on my hands.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, if you want a fun video, everybody for anybody who loves Raymond? The Clone Wars, everybody loves Raymond. For everybody who loves the Clone Wars, go watch all of the war crimes that they've done on YouTube. Yeah. You can find a video, all the war crimes that the Clone Army committed, and it's pretty bad. Yeah, worrying pretty apparently.
Okay, all right. Well, so let's then chat, just maybe sort of in summary, I guess I would say, about pros and cons of using a patron, particularly as it's been outlined here. Why don't we start with pros? We've mentioned some, right? Kind of the easy sort of jump into a campaign, could be great for story and role play purposes. To me, I think it might potentially really help sort of flesh out your world, right? It's not just like me, my friends, and a bunch of random NPCs. It's like, no, there are like political factions and like, and religious factions and, military factions and, et cetera, that are at play in this world. And it just makes it feel to me maybe a little broader, bigger than myself. Like I'm a small part in a sort of larger world kind of thing. And I think would kind of help with the immersion. Mm-hmm. I love the perks.
I think, and I feel like that when I'm looking at adventures, that's something that I've always had a very difficult time kind of resolving internally, is the idea that I, as a character, maybe you met it in a tavern type scenario. I'm just a vagrant going from town to town. Mm-hmm. I've never personally, like I always have that structure of like, okay, you wake up, you go to work, you do this, that kind of, mm-hmm. And I think that, like you said, having that like something to bind everybody together kind of makes it a little bit more believable.
Yeah. I love the perks, like just for purely mechanical purposes, if nothing else, right? Of course, being the optimizer, like free magic items or free money
advantage or
just,
free spell.
Free advantage,
Mm-hmm.
All those kinds of things. It's like, oh, some of these are like fairly powerful, especially at early levels. Like there's some ways that I could see this kind of working into a way to really just make your character stronger, which, I'm always all in favor of, right? What else? What am I missing? What are some other perks, or sorry, not perks? What are some other pros, do you think?
I think it's really cool to be able to establish early on who the good guy and bad guy is in a story too. Because we talk about like the religious order going again after a cult and going on a cult hunt, right? Like that can be the overarching story, and then people know exactly what their goal is moving forward, instead of it just being a like, okay, now this is the major plot line and maybe it'll tie back in to the other plot line that we were following, or we come here for one thing and then we end up doing something completely different because we didn't have a clear goal in mind for that kind of thing.
And obviously some parties and some tables may prefer that, I suppose, but for others they might like just a little nudging, a little direction, a little more guidance.
Yep. And it also gives you as a DM, it gives you a very convenient way to introduce new information and new quest hooks. Because it's not a okay, well, they have to find this one particular guy in this town and they have to think of a good reason why they would run into him other than the force, or serendipity.
And why they would help my farm is being whatever. Oh yeah, so I don't care. Like I'm gonna go over
whatever.
Here.
Yeah. Because you can't rely on your players to just be good people. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Not everybody is lawful good.
That, I think, is another pro. The way that they've written in there too is because a religious organization can also technically be like the cult. So if you're a cult, maybe now you're doing the inverse of that, where you're hunting the church and saying, okay, hey, maybe this god has over the millennia soured, and now or maybe they're just they're good and you just want to tear down good and you want to do an evil campaign, whatever.
Or you can do like a resistance force for a military force thing, and it could be like a resistance against a tyrannical kingdom or something like that. Like that's really cool. Like
guerrilla.
And it gives you I think that these work a lot better for short campaigns and one shots personally than overarching ones, because overarching ones it's always like, oh well, we better go report back to our patron, we haven't done that in a while, and it's like, you guys are on the complete other side of the continent with the main storyline. You don't need to go back and talk to the noble in
Waterdeep
Waterdeep or Helm or whatever. Helm isn't a Helm's a god.
Helm's a god.
Or talk to you don't want to talk to Helm. Exactly. Like it's one of those things where it's just like this is better for a smaller campaign where you have a clear goal of being like, here's point B and here's the reason why you're trying to get to point B, and go. Here's our one shot.
Okay, so what about cons then? Again, we've sort of talked about them, or at least a little bit. To me, the main one that sort of jumps out, I guess, and as we've sort of alluded to already, is it can potentially feel a little restrictive, right? For some players, they might not necessarily want to be all part of the same group, and it's like I wanted a little more freedom with my story or with my affiliates or whatever.
Like if you've got 4 players that are going, oh, we all want to be part of this religious order of this good god, and you're like, I was going to be a rogue, like how am I going to work this in, kind of thing, and suddenly you have to stretch. And I mean, obviously we could, because I'm already thinking of ideas, right? But it's one of those things where it's like I have to come up with ideas, or I wanted to be a warlock. That doesn't fit well with doing a religious order unless everybody wants to be kind of this weird neutral god or patron or whatever. So it definitely makes it so that if your party is in majority wanting to do something, you're kind of forced along or forced to find a new group.
Or my character, the history I was writing, they don't like nobles, and now like we have a noble patron, so like why am I working for this guy? I mean, and not to say that you couldn't come up with an interesting reason, but it might be restrictive to people in a way that they don't want to be restricted potentially.
I
don't know, I guess another one might be power creep. Some people like to complain about, right? It's like, oh, all these free little perks and feats that my character wouldn't otherwise have. Like, aren't you strong enough already?
Wisdom, +2 to con,
+2, or money or discounts.
I have one similar to that.
Yeah.
Basically, I don't like taking things away from my players, because if you give your players a reward and it's a temporary reward, or something happens that causes you to revoke that reward, suddenly your players feel very, like their toys got taken away, they got hurt.
Yes.
And every time that I've ever done this, whether it be a cursed sword or a magical, thing that was an addition to, it tends to sour the experience for that player a bit, or for the whole group in this case. So if your plan going into this is to have a patron that, eventually turns on them because of their actions, because you plant these little seeds of like, oh, maybe they're not the good person that you think they are. And the whole point is for them to realize, oh, we're the bad guys, we need to flip it around. And then suddenly it's like the consequences of you flipping that around is you no longer have any access to this patron
Perks,
stuff.
ABC,
And then it becomes this, well, why are we doing this? But that's
Yeah.
So for some groups, that's not a problem because that's the hero's choice, right?
Sure.
Is to give up that kind of great loot. But mechanically speaking, it's very hard to do if you are trying to optimize your party.
And of course, I mean, that's not to say that you couldn't, find a way to substitute, or maybe give them a different good patron now, or even just say, hey, you know what, like, because you guys have been working together for so long and you're like this cohesive unit, you can still have, this perk or that perk. Maybe you lose the gold that you were getting, or the military, or the military discount, the discount, on purchases or whatever, but like that might be a little less painful.
And I think that's fine, and there are plenty of GMs that would do that, but there are plenty of GMs or new DMs that might end up doing this without realizing it, and then their players aren't having as fun, and
Sure.
As a GM, it's always very disheartening to have your players complain about the game,
Right.
Go from really high to a low. Yeah, it's like, oh.
Yep. And I've had this happen a few times where I've taken away something, or a player has made a choice that I kind of took a step too far with that choice, and then they immediately wanted to roll it back because it was a terrible idea.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was giving them pushback on that, suddenly the game was no longer fun, and I have lost players when I was a new GM because of this, because they were upset that I took their character in a direction, or I took that consequence in a direction that they didn't want their character to go. Right. And some part of me says, oh well, that's sometimes you have to play the game, and sometimes bad things happen to your characters, but it can definitely take a new DM, and it can make them shy away from doing anything extra.
Yeah, I can see that.
So in that same breath, something about these that I'm going to use as like a pro and a con is, when it comes to these, trying to balance everything out and setting aside all the other kind of, I guess, restrictions that this introduces into it. Tracking stuff, right? I've never now, when it comes to tracking, saying, let me say, hey, all right, Colby, you're in the academy, and right now you're at the student level, right? You want to do advancement. I, as a DM, now have to keep track of, okay, have they fulfilled this to be able to become this level? Is just like another thing for me and for them to try to keep track of. And in my mind, I would like, if this organization was important to me and my character, I would want to advance and become like the paragon of whatever organization I'm trying to go for. But as a player or as a DM, like trying to keep track of, okay, in a military organization, do I need to use an honorific for talking to this guy versus this guy? Or am I going to get court-martialed for doing something like speaking out of turn, or I don't know.
And so it complicates things
a little
bit.
Yeah.
For me, that's not a problem. I always love adding extra systems that you advance through because it gives the players something else. Like I love adding little items that you research, or you have to like unlock new properties of, and things like that. And patrons are just an extension of that. Sure. I once had an entire system for my group of heroes that ended up like conquering this town that had been razed to the ground by somebody else, and had them rebuild it. And they could go down like a tech tree with full-on buildings and everything, and adding to their. It was ridiculous, but I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's not for everybody.
Right.
And sometimes you do just want to say, okay, you're part of the Harpers, and that's just kind of like a nebulous title. You're just part of the Harpers. Right. If you want to advance that, you talk with the DM about that and say, I want to increase my standing in the guild, or I want to become the head of this religious order.
Do that,
Right.
Or create opportunities. And that's where I say it's a pro and a con, depending on what kind of DM, depending on what kind of play style your players have. It can go either way.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that was a pretty good overview, more than overview probably of the patron
there's
system.
So much more in there. Like go read it.
Yeah.
Like there's so much more.
For sure.
Cool stuff.
If you're interested, check it out in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Let us know, what you think the best patron might be in the comments, and why.
Try and guess what Dallins is, because we didn't get to Dallins. Let's see if anybody.
No, wait. Let me see if I can. No, never mind.
No, please, no. We don't.
He shut me down last time. Thank you for watching. Appreciate you guys. Love you, and hope that you have a fantastic day. Thanks to two of my DMs for joining us. Thanks, and as always, guys.
Special guest star
and special and a very brief encounter with one other of the DMs who heard me talking
the
about
Stanley
him apparently.
cameo.
And yeah, exactly. So anyway, yes, have a great day. You guys are awesome. We'll see you soon. Be sure to tune in to our other videos. Check out the channel for everything D4 related, and like and subscribe and join and all those things. Anyway, have a good one. See you guys.
Bye-bye.